Hi, J.J. Dewey here again for the Majority Speaks. Now I want to remind any new viewers that the basic idea of the Majority Speaks is to represent the majority. In other words, there's a majority of the people of this country that are at odds against our Congress and our government in many different ways. So what we want to do is emphasize these differences and bring our government in line with the thinking of the majority. And one of the things I've done is to write a 95 thesis for the current political thinking. Each one of these 95 points, I believe, represents a point wherein the majority of the people are at odds against the Congress of the United States in many different ways. So let's continue on this. And one more point I want to make is this doesn't necessarily represent all my political views, because many of my political views are actually go contrary to the majority. I do not think the majority is always 100% right. But what I do think is that the majority of the people have a lot more common sense than the people that are attempting to govern us at the present time. So these 95 theses that I've written doesn't necessarily represent all my political views, but they represent things that I have studied wherein the majority of the people seem to be at odds with the government in various different ways. So there are 95 points wherein our government needs to harmonize with the will of the people. Many of these points have been proven statistically through polls and so on, but other points are so obvious that the majority of the people will identify them without having to have them proven. Okay, we left off at number 52 last week, and now we're going to number 53. 53. It is not the government's right or duty to tell the people whether or not they can keep their current health insurance, doctors, or for the government to drive an insurance company out of business. Now, since the health bill has passed, several things have been called into question. We were told they had to pass the health care bill in order for us to find out what's in it. So before Congress claimed to even know what was in it, they assured us we would be able to keep our doctors and our insurance companies. And now that people are exploring it and actually finding out what is in it, these things are called into question. Now, the majority of the people want to be able to keep at least the quality of health care they have now. They don't want to go down in quality, and they want to be able to keep their doctors or have a doctor of their choice. So this is pretty obvious that the majority of the people would want this. Number 54. If the government wants to impose universal health care or any other massive program that has not been proven to work in the United States, we must first do a trial in a state or a city to demonstrate that it works before we go on and do it on a massive scale. In other words, if we're going to do something that's going to obligate the people to a massive change, the logical thing to do is do it on a small scale, see how it works. If it works well, then we do it. If it doesn't work well, if it's not cost efficient, if people aren't happy, then we go back to the drawing board and we just start over. But no, what they want to do is they wanted to pass a massive bill that they didn't know what was in it until they passed it, they told us, and thrust it upon us with no experimentation. So doesn't it make sense that before we pass some type of massive bill like this that's going to affect the lives of every man, woman, and child in this country, that we do a little bit of experimentation? Do the bill in a city or a state or a region first, see how it works, tweak it, fine-tune it, get it to where it does work before we implement it on every man, woman, and child in the country, and then implement it to the point where we can't go back. Because oftentimes when we create a massive program like this, there's no turning back. For instance, once Social Security was introduced, Medicare, or any other massive entitlement, there was no going back. And there's like Medicare, for instance, is like $65 billion of fraud every year with Medicare. Massive waste, but we can't go back and really fine-tune it. We can't go back and take out the fraud and make it more efficient. We should, before we pass any bill, we should make sure that it is workable and efficient. Make it efficient before we implement it on everyone and run us into financial ruin. Now the next section is, we just finished the section on healthcare. Now we're going to education. These are points in education where the majority of the people, I believe, are at odds against many things that the government wants to do. 55, children should be required to pass a standardized test before being promoted to the next grade in school, and should be required to pass the citizenship test before completing high school. Let's go on to talk a little bit about the citizenship test first. In other words, if somebody wants to become a citizen of this country, they have to pass a test that shows some pretty good basic understanding about how this country works. Well, you know, if a kid graduates from grade school or high school, either one, he should be able to at least pass a citizenship test. And so that would be a good test to ensure that our kids pass. Since they're going to be adult citizens one day, they should be able to be at least as knowledgeable as an immigrant about the basics of this country. Now, I'm not really for standardized testing. I don't think it's that efficient, but on the other hand, it may be the only thing that can really work for us. But we can't really take our kids and promote them when they haven't learned the basics of the class that they're in. Therefore, they should have to give some type of performance test to illustrate that they have or demonstrate that they have really earned a passing degree. And the majority of the people I know would go along with this. They want our kids to be able to actually prove that they have learned from the class that they've taken. If they're passing from the 7th to the 8th grade or the 5th to the 6th grade, they should be able to be competent. I remember back when I was in the 8th grade, there was this one kid that was in the class that all the teachers thought was mentally challenged. And he was really a pretty smart kid. He just didn't like to work. And so he pretended like he was really stupid. But what was funny about this kid is that a whole bunch of other kids paid him to do their homework. So, you know, every night he made extra money doing their homework, and then by day he attended school and pretended like he was dumb and didn't do any work. Yet the funny part was the teachers still passed him and gave him a diploma for he passed the 8th grade. But many kids are probably like that are not appearing to perform well. They have the ability, and if we give them the correct incentive, and if they know they're going to have to take show some type of performance, then they'll work harder. If they know that they can get promoted from one grade to the next without having to do much, then many of them will not do very much. "56. School vouchers should be made available to those that desire choice for their children's education." School vouchers make a lot of sense, and a lot of people are being convinced about them every day. And the interesting thing is the people who would benefit most from school vouchers are the minorities, especially African Americans, would benefit greatly by school vouchers, yet the people the African Americans vote for are the ones most adamantly against school vouchers, which doesn't seem to compute very well. But school vouchers can, I believe, spur more competition and more excellence in education in the long run. Thesis number 57. It's outrageous that we pay the average teacher in the United States we pay, not the average teacher, but we pay an average of $9,000 per student to educate them in our classes. And the teachers do not receive a higher income than they do. This means in a class of like 30 students, in the United States, the average cost for one class of 30 students would be $270,000. And how much of that $270,000 would a teacher be getting? Maybe $30,000, $40,000? Well, where's the other $230,000 go? For administration, buses, and the interesting part is a lot of the school construction is not figured in that $9,000. So we can't say it all goes to school construction. So where does all this money go? You know, I've looked into it and I've had a very difficult time finding out where all of our education money goes. It's very difficult to dig up. I think that those who handle the money don't really want us to know the details about how all the money in education is spent. But a large percentage of it goes toward administration. You know, you go back to the old days. In the Old West, they had a little school. They hired a teacher. She taught the kids well, and they had no administration at all. Just had a teacher and taught the kids, and they learned well. And when you look at the tests that the kids took back in those days, it's amazing how difficult those tests were compared to the tests the kids take today. Those kids learn pretty good. So what we need to do is streamline where the money goes. So we need to cut back on a lot of perks in the administration, and also we need to look at how to maybe cut some of the staff out of the administration and take some of the administrators and give them job offerings as teachers, and then increase the teachers' pay. Another thing that irks me about what teachers have to go through, and I'm sure the majority would support this, is that they don't have any type of slush fund, so to speak, to buy extra stuff in educational supplies to help them to teach their kids. I've talked to teachers that say they get $30, $40 a year maybe for just odds and ends that they can buy. And I've talked to teachers that say that they've spent a lot of money out of their own pocket to be able to buy extra things, extra materials, teaching aids, so that they can better teach their kids. So it's ridiculous that a teacher might be given $30, $40, $50 a year for extra stuff like this when we're spending $270,000 a year to educate a class of 30, and the teachers may be getting $30,000, $40,000. Something is wrong with this picture, and I think the majority would definitely agree.